Hello, Gaudi class. In today's history lesson, we're going to look at the ISS, the International Space Station, one of the most phenomenal things to be out in space as far as I'm concerned. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we use words from the past to describe what's going on. So ISS is the International Space Station. And it's international because many different countries have astronauts aboard it at any one time. So we're going to look at a PowerPoint and learn more about the ISS. So this is a picture of the ISS, and it's a really interesting one because that big blue semicircle is the Earth. So in my head, I kind of want to turn upside down and look at it so the Earth is at the bottom because that's what I'm used to seeing from space. But that's the ISS. And the International Space Station is a giant satellite, and humans can live on for short periods of time. But they tend to be up there for 6 months at a time. Now, that's not such a short period of time if you think about it, but in the greater scheme of things, it is. I don't think I'd want to be away from my family in a confined space for 6 months. There are lots of reasons I couldn't be an astronaut, but that's definitely one of them. So the ISS was originally built on Earth. It wasn't built in space. It was built on different places on Earth as well. Different modules, different parts of it were built in different areas. And then they were taken up into space separately and joined together. Now, this wasn't a short mission. It was done over a very long period of time. So engineers took parts up in space shuttles and joined them together up in space. So the very first part was taken up from NASA in 1998. And then humans started living there in 2000, so 21 years ago. Sections have been added over the years and it's now complete, although there are repairs that need to happen to it, but they're not going to be putting any more modules on it. And you can see these long sticks that stick out are the satellites. So countries around the world work together to build the ISS, and it's not the first space station. It's the current space station. There was previously the Mir space station as well. And we talked about that when we talked about Helen Sharman going into space. So she went to the Mir space station. But currently the one in orbit around the Earth, one that circles the Earth every 90 minutes, is the International Space Station, the ISS. So different countries from around the world, European countries, including the United Kingdom, other countries from America, the United States, Japan, Canada, and Russia have all played a part in helping to build this and sending astronauts up into space. So underneath this video, there's a link to another video about life on the ISS, and that's quite a fun one to watch to get some idea of what it's like to be out in space. I don't think I discussed yesterday when we were looking at people doing spacewalks. You can't just leave the ISS and go and walk out into space. You would float off because of the lack of gravity. So if you do go into space, you have to be tethered, which means tied. So if you look very carefully, you can see the cables that tie these two astronauts to the ISS. So that they can't just float off. Somebody has to then haul them in, a bit like a fishing rod. You let them go and then you have to reel them back in so they can end up back on the ISS. So one of the main reasons for building the ISS in the first place was to allow for scientific experiments to be done in space. Scientists think that we're going to need to find somewhere to live other than planet Earth. And they want to find out if it is possible for humans to live in space. So they conduct all these experiments to see, could we feed ourselves? Could we exercise? Could human life maintain itself if it wasn't on planet Earth? So some of the experiments that they have carried out is they've tried to grow plants. They've tried to find out what happens to the human body and the effects of the human body. And we said yesterday that actually due to the lack of gravity, you can grow 5 centimetres on the ISS, because I told you that Mrs. Jalap and I had decided that was a good reason for going. There are lots of reasons I wouldn't want to go, but to grow 5 centimetres might be a good one. Although that would possibly cause a problem with my wardrobe, and my skirts and my trousers would suddenly all be a bit short, maybe my jumpers as well. but it would depend on where the 5 centimeters came from. Also, you don't use your muscles very much, because we use our muscles an awful lot to do absolutely everything. Just standing up requires muscles, and walking requires muscles. If you don't have to do that because there's no gravity and you just float all the time, then actually you're not using many of your muscles, so your muscles will become weaker. They've looked at how fire behaves in space, and they've looked at melting metals and working with chemicals to see how that's different in space from the way it is on the Earth. There are also amazing views from Earth, and that should have a capital E, I apologise, from the International Space Station. So whilst it circles around the Earth, the astronauts can see Earth. And that's a really, really odd view of the United Kingdom. We're somewhere around this area here. I apologise. Got in trouble from Mrs. Jalaf with my English the other day for writing my capital letters in the middle of words, and now I'm going to get in trouble again for not putting my capital letters at the beginning of words that should have capital letters. So names, Earth and International Space Station should have had capital letters. Mrs. Gabella. This is one of the most beautiful views from the ISS, and you work out what that is. So this is a night shot, and these are lights. So if you look really closely, you can see a really bright patch here. That's London, because obviously where there are more people, there are more lights. So Scotland doesn't have, the top of Scotland, north of Scotland doesn't have very many lights on. But in the rural areas where lots of people live, there are lots and lots of lights. That's quite cool. Different countries. So I'm wondering, this is Spain over here. I'm not very good with my geography, but I'm assuming that that must be Madrid, which is the capital of Spain. And that one, or another one, the Earth by day. And that is a picture of an astronaut having a spacewalk on the ISS and the Earth behind him. And you can just see the cloud formation, which is just so amazing. So your task for today is to make a poster about the ISS. So I'm going to just go on to the next slide and ignore what it said on that one. So there are 3 challenges. Please, please, please do the challenge you know you'd be given at school. So if you're just, oh, it's a lazy afternoon, it's a Friday, I want to just go and watch TV, I'm only going to write 1 fact. You know that when you put that on tapestry, Mrs. Jalaf and I are going to turn around and say, excuse me, that's not what we expect from you. And we're going to be quite disappointed. So please make sure that you do what you would be expected to do at school. So you've got a choice between writing 1 fact, 3 fact, and 5 facts. And you know what you should be doing. So your title is the International Space Station, and you've got the video that I told you to watch. You can rewind through this one to find out the information that I gave you on the PowerPoint. So you can draw pictures. You could download pictures from the internet if you've got a printer. If you haven't, don't worry. Pardon me. And I'd like you to design a poster, just 1 poster. And it depends on the size of paper you've got at home. It can just be a regular A4 piece of paper. If you've got bigger paper, then that would be fantastic. But please don't worry if you haven't. So 1, 3, or 5 facts about the International Space Station. And I look forward to seeing your work on Tapestry.